All right, welcome everyone. My name is Max Lushchan. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Apporto. With me, I've got Rudy Marin as well. He's one of our Customer Success Managers. Both Rudy and I actually used to work in higher education before joining Apporto for several years, so we've got a lot of experience working in the higher ed environments, and we've worked on the IT side, worked closely with faculty and instructional designers. So we have a good understanding of what folks are dealing with out there. So we're here to demonstrate what capabilities Apporto has and what benefits it has to offer as well in your areas there. So if you're here today, that means that you are most likely already a customer. So ultimately, what I'm going to cover in this training session is just some of the basics, go through some of the feature sets that we have. I'll try to show anything else in between. But the general approach to this session will be, I'll talk about how to log into Apporto, what the App Store access looks like and what it handles there. More importantly, I'll talk about once we're inside the virtual environment, what the file handling capabilities are, maybe file restoration as well. That's really important for, I think, faculty to educate their students on, or for faculty to know in general as well. It's just a good best practice to understand how we have file handling working in this environment because we do have persistent profiles. I'll also talk about the virtual classroom and the presenter mode features that you have access to. I'll cover the learning management system integrations that we offer as well. And I'll talk about Cyberlab possibilities. That's more a little bit more on the computer science side. That may not be relevant to everyone, but it's an interesting feature that we have as well. And then we'll open up some room for additional Q&A if we need that. But as I mentioned earlier, you guys can go ahead and interrupt me as I go at any point. Rudy might interrupt me as well in case I forget something. So whatever goes there will be fine. And you can go ahead and send something in the chat and ask your questions and I'll answer them live. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit and pull up one of my demo environments in a second here. And we'll just get this thing started. Okay, let me go ahead and reshare. All right. So what I have here is a web browser. I'm sure some of you know that we're device agnostic and we're browser agnostic as well. So what that means is that we support any of the new, current modern web browsers today. So that means Edge, Firefox, Safari, Opera will work, and then some of the other third-party ones as well. So anything that's HTML5 capable will support that. Generally, we do the majority of our testing on the Chrome, so that's what I'm demonstrating here. But then later on, I will also use Edge and maybe Firefox. Nonetheless, Chrome should be fine. It's currently the most popular and most used browser according to a lot of statistics out there. So that's what I'll recommend in this case. Okay, so I've got my landing page here. So all of you have your own instance websites that you might have. Generally, it's something like, your university.apporto.com or something along those lines. But I think you should already know what your sites are. If you don't, you can go ahead and shoot us an email to contact us. By the way, you can reach out to success@apporto.com. That will blanket my team that I manage here. So any questions you might have, we're happy to answer at any time after this as well. So your login site might look a little bit different. In most cases, you'll have a big login button in the middle there. And when users click on that, it'll redirect to your single sign-on platform that you're already used to. So that is generally how most universities are using, means of access. So another way would be through the learning management system as well. But it just kind of depends on how you guys have it set up with us. So in most cases, it's just single sign-on. So whether that's through Microsoft or Okta, or et cetera, things like that. So after this login page, I'll go ahead and log in with my ID. And after I log in, I'll be brought to the App Store. And the App Store is really just a collection of environments that users have access to. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. So in this case, I have access to some of these applications. I have a virtual Mac desktop here. I have a Linux-based Cyberlab. I have a Windows desktop, and then I have a couple isolated applications like Excel and SolidWorks. So generally what students see when they log in is just this App Store view. And in that case, they have access to a list of applications that were defined either by their class, course groups, or by the IT admin when they created some of the applications and how those are published to whomever based on some of the group access that they have. So what I want to show you today initially is the student perspective and kind of fly through some of the features that we have in that environment. And then I'll cover more of the faculty perspective and how that interacts with students as well. So let me go ahead and switch gears and get into my student account. Another thing too, Rudy posted in the chat is access to our help center. There are a lot of user guides there. We have everything from written guides to some video tutorials, both for the students and for the faculty alike. And those are really useful written guides there to refer to. So I really recommend getting a copy of that link. I'll also show you how you can access that from the portals as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into the environment with my student ID now. I was logged in as an admin just a second ago. Okay, so this is what a student will see. They're brought to that app store that I mentioned. If there's any announcements here, faculty can create some of these, admins can create some of these, but this is also another interesting use case where in the App Store you can have announcements listed here. So anything in particular that the university might want to announce, or maybe you want to announce to your students, there's ways to do that. All right, so at the top right, we also have this help link here. And there's some basic stuff in here, but the first more important link is the user guide, and that's what Rudy posted here in the chat. This takes us here to Help Center for Education, and it's broken down between several parts here, but the first one starts with the video tutorials. And initially, we're trying to help students with some video tutorials there. And then we have faculty tutorials as well, and these cover a lot of things like you'll be seeing today. Things like using the virtual classroom, or maybe mounting a cloud drive using our cloud mounter tool, presenting your session to your students, things like that. So it's kind of like screen sharing, but I'll show you a demo of that. And then below that, we have the written guides as well. So these are much more in-depth KB type of articles and things like that. So really recommend you guys take a look at that and refer to that anytime if you have questions. And then more importantly as well, we do have support. So if you do click on that, that's going to take you to our support page where you can see some of our statuses here. But more importantly, if you have an issue or something like that, you can go ahead and just fill this in really quickly. And then you could also chat or submit a ticket. We're really responsive on these. So that's if you need any help there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of launch one of the environments here. So you can, so we can just jump into the feature set there. Okay, really important here. You will see a couple of pop-ups when you connect to an environment like this. The first one here is basically asking me if I want to allow the clipboard functionality between my physical computer and the virtual machine. So I'm going to click allow, because I do want to be able to copy things like images or text from and to or backwards from my machine to the virtual environment and vice versa. Okay, so we've got now a session that we're streaming, and a couple of features here that are important. I'll start from the right-hand side this time. I usually kind of go through these, but I think some of these on the right-hand side are also equally as important. So if we look at the top right, we've got that familiar help menu as well. So kind of the video tutorials, user guide, same links that I showed you there. And then we have the support request. So it's important to know that students can access the help resources, or you guys can access the help resources from the App Store view, from the portal, and from the virtual machine as well. And actually really soon, we're going to add another feature where you can submit kind of like a bug report or like a issue ticket directly from here. So just to kind of help you speed things up a little bit if there's an issue. There's also some other options here as well. So let me kind of cover these a little bit. Right now, I'm using 2 monitors on my setup here. And I want to point out that there is a little flyout here, this little arrow, that if you do want to use multi-monitor, you can do that. So you can launch your session with multi-monitor mode enabled. So if I do that, it would open up a tab here like it did. And if you have multiple monitors, we can support up to 3. And you would see an A/B button here that would show up next to the volume button. And clicking that will open up additional tabs on your machine. And then you can take those tabs and kind of arrange them across your monitors that way. So you can open up additional monitors and put them on different screens that you might have. And now you'll have kind of an extended display setup. Okay, so another important part here is screen scaling and screen resolution. So really what this is, the monitor that you're viewing right now is 1080p resolution, but we support up to 4K and maybe I think even more than that. So if you do have a scenario where you connect to this environment and things are looking quite small, for example, like the icons are really tiny or something like that, you can adjust the scaling. Generally, what we're doing is we're detecting your scaling settings on your machine, and we're trying to match that to the local display that you have. But otherwise, you can adjust these if you want things to be a little bit larger. So there's one way to do that. And we also do have like a low resolution mode. Maybe if you're using like a hotspot or just like a satellite internet that's kind of spotty or something like that, this can help to improve that performance a little bit. But I'll also cover this piece here. If you did forget to toggle that clipboard functionality in the beginning, you can kind of bring it back here. This will help you kind of get that prompt again so you can enable it. And also we do support microphone support as well. So if you do need to toggle that on for some reason, you could. And I'll show you in presenter mode, there's a way to do that as well when I cover that in a little bit. Okay. So we've got a couple basic things here. This is just a timer on your session, just so you know how long you've been connected for. We've got a little bit of activity recording here. This is just monitoring usage in terms of interaction with the environment. We're looking at mouse movement, keyboard input, things like that. And then the more important piece here is a network indicator. So what this is showing us is the latency from my computer, my internet connection to our data center. So in this case, I'm in Northern California, and that just happens to be where we have one of the data centers for this. So my latency is pretty low. Anything under 100 megabits is generally pretty good. Under 75 is more like near native. So this is really good latency, and this is a good kind of troubleshooting tool that you can use in case somebody reports things like lag or something like that. So if somebody's connecting from the other side of the world and we don't have multi-region support set up with your environment, then that they could click on this. They'll kind of see maybe one red line or something like that. But that's something you could ask your students as well, like, hey, can you click on this cell phone meter looking thing and let us know what latency you're seeing. So if they're reporting something like 200 or 700 milliseconds, then that can explain some of the delays that they might be experiencing. And another thing I wanted to point out is that you can see that my bandwidth utilization is quite low. So we're only updating pixels as they change. So we're not refreshing the whole screen. We're not streaming a full video or something like that. This is more, it's really optimized for low bandwidth utilization. So even if I start moving things around on the screen, we'll see just tiny little spikes of data being sent. So really not anything intense. We could do things like watch videos. We could use more 3D heavy applications like SolidWorks and rotate some 3D models, and that will increase the utilization. And the spikes will go between maybe 1 megabit to 12 or 15 megabits. So they're really short bursts of heavier data usage. But that is all to say that, cellular will work. I've actually demonstrated this on a cell phone before, or maybe an iPad that has a cell connection and things like that. So very low bandwidth utilization. Okay, I'm going to cover now the left-hand side of the feature sets. So let me first talk about full screen mode. When I toggle this, and if I expand my screen share a little bit, you'll see that I have really two taskbars. So one is my bottom one, which is my Windows 11 machine, the machine I'm using to connect to the environment, and then the virtual taskbar. So if I click on this button, that's going to pixel for pixel resize the browser environment into full screen mode, and that will bring me to the exact resolution that I have. So I'm getting a full screen experience here, and in this specific mode is where we support all types of keyboard and key combinations. So if you're using more sophisticated software that requires things like Control Shift Alt, F5 or something like that, multiple key presses, we can capture those events the best if you're in full screen mode. So in this type of approach, I could hit like my Windows key and tab, right? And I can go between my virtual desktops and things like that. So right now I don't have anything open. So go ahead and start opening up a couple of things. But you could see that I can pass my values and my keyboard shortcuts directly to the virtual machine. So full screen mode is really recommended if users are working with those types of applications. Now to get out, you can move your mouse to the top, and that will bring up the toolbar again. And you can also, there's also a fly out little X that you can click on when you bring your mouse to the top, so that can get you out of full screen mode as well. Okay, so really useful button there. And then the next two buttons are moving files in and out of this environment. Generally, so we can support these profiles that are persistent. So what that means is that if I logged in today, I put this text file, let's see when I created that. Looks like I created it quite some time ago, and it's been there since I left it. So the idea is that, when students copy a file to their desktop or maybe their documents folder and or their downloads folder and things like that, these files are persistent to the students. So if I log out and come back a month later, my files will still be there. And this is really handy and useful to students who are working on project files, right? If they want to, save something, they can, right? They come back, their stuff is still there. So we're not deleting anyone's files or anything like that, or any data. The only time their data goes away is when the systems administrator, physically deletes their account out of the portal. But generally, from what I've seen, most universities don't really do that, at least not for accounts that aren't a year or two old. So that's the idea. We persist the desktop folder, downloads folder, and the documents folder. And also I want to point out that we have this U drive at the bottom, and the U drive is symbolically linked to the documents folder. So what that means is that it's really the same thing. And the reason why we create the U drive is because some legacy older applications don't support the means of how we're redirecting or persisting these containerized profiles and these locations. So some older applications only want to work with like a direct drive letter, like a C drive or something like that. So what I like to recommend is just to kind of instruct people, hey, yeah, just save your stuff to the U drive. And that's a good way to kind of put it, because we can always see it. And any application that you're working with, it will always show up there as a drive letter. So it's really easy to just say, save everything to the U drive. So that's a kind of a safe blanket across, old legacy applications that are just not quite, as fancy as some of the newer applications out there today. All right. So this brings me to the next topic here about file handling. So for one, we could click to move files between the virtual machine and our physical computers. There's a couple different ways we could do that. So for one, I can click on file upload here, and that will bring up a file explorer. So I can go ahead and click on open, and that will take a file and upload it to my desktop automatically. Another thing that users can do is they can take a file directly from like File Explorer and drag it into the virtual environment as well. And when we do something like that, let me grab another file. So I'm dragging that from my desktop, and that's going to drag and drop it to the desktop. That's the default location where files will be uploaded to. Okay. To download files from the virtual environment, we can't drag and drop from the browser to our physical computers. But what we can do is click on the file download button, and that will bring up our this file explorer, this virtual file explorer. So if we click on the Apporto button, that's going to back up a couple directories, and it will show us those redirected locations that I mentioned earlier, like desktop, documents, and downloads. And remember that the U drive is the same thing as documents. So if users are expecting to see a U drive here, they could just double click on documents and they'll see those files that they had there. So if we want to download something from the virtual desktop, we could just click on the file, click on download, and that's going to download that file to the location that you've set for your browser downloads. Okay, so that's how file handling works to move files in and out. Another way that you could do this, you know, we do have a virtual browser in all of the virtual desktops, so you could also open up Google Chrome, for example, or Edge, or whatever that's installed in your environment there, and you can navigate to whatever cloud drive service you're already using, like drive.google.com, OneDrive.com, Box, Dropbox, etc. You could also mount some of those drives in our Cloud Mounter tool here as well. And the way that this works is we have you know, this option, right? So we support all of these cloud drives. We also support network drives or specified drives that your university might have kind of pre-configured here. Now, some of you might see a truncated list. It just really depends what the IT admins requested in this environment. But the idea is that you can, you know, click on OneDrive here. By default, we're assuming you want that drive to reconnect each time that you log back in. So that means if I leave this checked and come back next week, if I continue here and create this connection, I can log in with my Microsoft account and I can have OneDrive persist in my File Explorer as a drive letter, and it'll show up here as OneDrive. And then from there, it'll just be like navigating, you know, directly into any directory. So that's the idea how that works. Okay, and when we do mount a network or a cloud drive through Cloud Mounter, we do have a pop-up that shows up, and we recommend that you don't you know, work directly off of it with really large data sets or files. So if something is like a 500 megabyte file that you're trying to directly work through that, you know, OneDrive connection, we recommend copying it down to your desktop first and then working on it there, saving it, and then re-uploading it back to your cloud drive. There is some throttling going on from some of these cloud services, so we just recommend it'll be a faster experience to copy it down, work on it, and then, you know, copy it back up. Alternatively, you could do the same if you open up the virtual browser as well. Okay, so another important piece to file handling here is that students do have the ability to restore files. So of course, we've got the recycle bin here, but some students might know that if you hold Shift and press the delete key, that's going to permanently delete a file. So what we have is what we call shadow copies, which is just a Microsoft technology, but basically we can click, let's say this folder that I had here on my desktop, I can right click on that, click on properties, and I can click on this previous versions tab. And here we'll see different hourly backups of that version of that folder. So maybe I started working on a project earlier. Maybe I deleted those files. Maybe I modified them to a point that, you know, I kind of got too deep in trouble with my project, need to go back, but I've overwritten those files. I've, you know, saved over them. This is a good way to be able to restore something from a different time point. Now, of course, these are taken hourly. So, you know, if you started the project, you know, 20 minutes in and things like that, you're not going to be able to restore back, you know, 5 minutes prior. So they are hourly time points. So we can go back and we can either restore the entire folder, or I can just click on open to view the contents of that time period, right? So I can check for the 27th for whatever time this was, and I can just take that file and copy it directly from that restore. And that will just go ahead and overwrite that file. So that's a really good way to do it. And you can actually do this with any parent folder. So that means that I can technically right click on desktop here and go to properties and then view the previous versions of that environment. And so I could do the same with downloads. I could do the same with documents, and I think you could do it with the U drive. Let me see. No, not the U drive, because it symbolically links back to documents. But that's the idea. You can go ahead and view those previous versions. So that's a really good way to do that. We do have a what we call a snapshot feature as well. So if I click on this, what that will allow me to do is I can take up to 2 full snapshots, and really the snapshots just cover a full backup. It essentially takes an hour, or it takes a backup of all of my redirected locations. So the desktop, the downloads, the documents. It'll take a full backup of all of the files within all of those redirected areas or those persistent locations. And so, if you're working with a whole lot of data and you have a lot of subfolders and many different areas where you're saving things to, you can go ahead and create a snapshot. Basically takes a full backup of your whole profile. And then you can restore to that at any point. So each user is allowed up to 2 snapshots. Okay. So then we also have screen sharing capabilities. That's what this button is. And screen sharing allows users to share their screen, by a couple different ways. So when we're in view only mode, if I click on copy link and then send that link to somebody, it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody that has an account with Apporto or an account with the university. It could be anybody. And anyone who clicks that link, and that'll support multiple users as well. So if I click this copy link, a URL will be copied to my clipboard. I can send that to 3 people, for example. Those 3 people can click on that URL and they'll be seeing what I'm doing on my screen. So I'm going to be essentially doing a screen share. If I click that and do view and draw, that will generate a URL that allows 2 people to kind of annotate on a screenshot of the current state of that virtual desktop. And then full control allows people to take control over that environment. So really helpful for maybe a student sending the URL to a TA, for example, who might be helping them out, or a tutor, things like that. And same thing, multiple people can use it. So 3 or 4 people can click that link, and now you'll see 4 mouse pointers moving around. What's important to know is that these URLs do expire. So for example, if I send that to Rudy here, totally forget, if I click on the X button in my browser tab, or if I close my browser, or if I log out through the start menu, that will sign out that session, and that will make that link expire. So it can't be something that will be reused. It expires when the session closes. And then to stop a screen share, we can just click on that button up top again, and there'll be a stop share button here, and that will kind of end that screen sharing capability. Okay, so we do have a chat messenger here as well. And the way that this works is by group. So if there's a class group that exists, in this case, Math 101, you could see that no one's online right now. But if there was other, students, if there were other students online, or maybe faculty who were online, I would see them here, and we'd be able to chat with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and start spinning up a different browser in a moment, and I'm going to log in as faculty, so that we can kind of see that chat interaction there. What's nice about the chat messenger is that it supports voice over IP, or like a phone conversation type of approach. So that's supported as well, which is nice. You could also directly do a screen share with users through the chat messenger as well. So that's also very helpful. But it's a nice way to be able to see, who's online, what they're, have a conversation about a project or something like that. So there's those capabilities. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and spin this up. So So I'll be logging in with a faculty account on my side. Sorry, I'll move that browser over in just a second. And then I'll cover some of the things that you guys will see as faculty, and I'll explain that we do have kind of customized roles in this environment as well. So faculty can have extra permissions to do all kinds of things. So let me go ahead and kind of do a little split screen view here. All right. So on the right-hand side, I've logged in as a faculty member, and on the left-hand side, I'm still logged in as a student. So one thing I want to point out is that you could see that students just have a very restricted view. They just have the App Store, whereas faculty will have a few more additional buttons here on the left. And some of those will be things like feature settings. So a lot of those features that I showed you, upload, download, clipboard, screen sharing, snapshots. These are items that faculty can turn off for their classes. So for example, if you have a class that you're teaching and you don't want students to be able to chat with each other, or maybe you don't want students to be able to do screen sharing, right? You don't want them to be able to kind of work together in that sense. You could do that. You can come in, select the course that you're teaching, and then just go ahead and disable that feature for that class or messenger and so forth. So there's a lot of buttons that you can kind of play with here and features that you can disable. So that's really helpful. It allows you to restrict some of those items there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and launch the virtual desktop now as faculty. Okay, so while that's logging me in, on the student side, I see that my faculty has come online. I'll probably give these roles real names. And so we could see some chat history, right? As student, I can contact my faculty. I can initiate a phone conversation with them. Here that prompts, access to the microphone. And then from there, we could see that the faculty is receiving this call. I'm going to go ahead and decline. So you could do a one-on-one voice chat. You can also initiate a screen share directly from the messenger as well. So maybe I want to just enable a remote control to that faculty. I click this button, share my screen, the faculty will get that prompt, and then from there, you can accept or decline it. So if I accept it, we'll go ahead and kind of take over that desktop and be able to manipulate it. And what's nice about that feature is that everybody sees each other's cursors as well. So that's helpful to see who's who, and that way there's no misunderstanding of which mouse belongs to whom. So that's really useful there. Okay, so that's the screen sharing capability. Really straightforward, nothing too special, but really useful communication tool. And again, this is broken down by classes. So maybe I launched this from my LMS, and maybe I'm enrolled in 6 other courses. If those courses are using Apporto, they'll be displayed here. So I'll see, my other classes and those class groups. Okay. So let me go ahead and close that. Users are also able to specify, if they want to appear away or be on do not disturb, things like that. And if you don't want to see it, you can close on the X button, or you can minimize it for the time being. Okay, so we have 2 new icons here as faculty, right? We've got virtual classroom and we've got presenter mode. So what virtual classroom allows us to do is to be able to see our students' screens. This is kind of like mimicking, a physical lab, and you're able to walk down the aisles, right, and check and kind of look over your shoulder to see what students are doing in real time. What's nice about this feature is that you'll see kind of like a real-time update, right? So maybe 1 or 2 second delay between my actions as a student there. Right. And so what it does is it gives us kind of like little snapshots, these thumbnails. And I think each page supports, 25 thumbnails. And so as students start to connect and launch this environment, this page begins to fill up with, pictures. And, if you have more students who are going to connect and there's over 25, additional pages will be added as well. You can also kind of shrink the view to like less thumbnails per page, perhaps. And the idea is that, as the class fills up, you'll see everyone's screens updating, right there. And what's nice here is that if a student needs help, they can raise their hand and you'll get a notification from the browser. If a student raises their hand, but they happen to be on page 6, for example, right down here at the bottom, that page number will start pulsing. So you'll get a visual, cue that someone needs help, and you'll know where you need to click to see that. So if I want to let the student know that, hey, I got you, I've acknowledged that you need some assistance, you can click on the handprint there and the student gets this notification that the faculty has acknowledged your hand raise. Okay, so from here, if you want to take a closer look, you can click on that video or on that screen, on that picture, and you'll have a more updated real-time view. So now as students kind of are actually manipulating their environment, you'll have a real-time stream of what they're doing. And then from there, if you feel like, okay, hold on, you're not doing the right thing, you can also call them. Right, so the messenger here is showing that specific student's screen. So this is the chat box with that student in particular, right? And from here, what's nice is you can give them a call so you guys can talk. Another thing that you could do is initiate a full remote control request. So here you're being notified that you're just waiting for that approval. And if the student approves, you'll be able to manipulate their environment. So this is a really nice tool to kind of see if somebody's getting stuck. You can kind of, intervene and help them out. And then once you're done here, you can go ahead and just click on that little X at the top right. And so that's the virtual classroom feature. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a really good tool. Let me show you guys another interesting feature. So let's say that you're instructing your students on something, right? You're trying to show your students how to work on a project, for example. So let me go ahead and load up our Star Wars hero here. Now, there's obviously other tools that you could use for this, right? You could use Zoom or something like that to share your screen, but we built that functionality into this tool set here so that you can just kind of not launch a million things and have one thing to work off of there. Okay, so here is, we've got our famous our famous R2D2. And so if you want to present your desktop to your students, you can click on that button there at the top. That's called presenter mode. And from here, you'll be able to select which class you want to broadcast your virtual session to. If you're teaching more than one class and that class is embedded in Apporto, they'll show up here. So engineering, etc., any other courses that you're teaching. If you do want to broadcast your voice to your class in this presentation, you can just check that box there and then click here. So we'll go ahead and share the screen. And what you'll see in a second is that students will get a prompt on their screen and it'll ask them in which method or which view they want to watch your presentation. So we have two options here. If the student has multiple monitors, let's say they have 2 monitors, they can click a new tab. So that means that your streamed desktop will show up in a separate tab, which the student will take that tab and move it to their other monitor. If they don't have multi-monitor, they can click on in page. And if you guys remember a long time ago when TVs had picture in picture, this is basically what that is. This is PIP. So what we have here is a little view of your presentation, and the students can move it around. There's a little minimize button there if they want to kind of tuck it away for a moment. They can bring it back. If it's too small to see, they can adjust its size, right? And it's a real-time stream of what you're showing them. So it's a nice way to view the presentation, right? And they can move it around, they can move it out of the way. They can also close it. Maybe they're like, okay, you know what? I meant to click on new tab. So they can come back up here as long as you're still presenting, which we are. The student sees the presenter mode button here. They can click on that and again, review that prompt and then choose, which method they want to watch your presentation in. So it's a really neat feature, really easy to to use and simple to broadcast your screen share to your students. And then when you're done sharing your screen, you can just click this button again, and you'll be prompted here to stop sharing, and then that will disable that button for the students, and you've completed that screen share. So really straightforward, really neat feature, but it just, helps everyone to kind of have, the kind of like an out of box experience. Everything is in one ecosystem. You don't have to launch multiple tabs and do a whole lot of logins and things like that. Okay, I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit, and if anybody has questions, like I said, feel free to jump in on the chat, say something. In the meantime, I will pull up another quick demonstration about how you can access the environment through, let's say, Canvas. So we do support all of the LMSs out there. So let me go ahead and get into our Canvas LMS, but we support Canvas, we support Blackboard, we support Desire to Learn, D2L, right, Brightspace. We support Moodle, Sakai, SkillJar. If I'm forgetting another, Blackboard. So we do have all of the abilities to integrate with your LMS. And I'll demonstrate what that looks like, at least through Canvas here. So Canvas is the most popular one at the moment. Seemingly, it's just really taken off. Heard a lot of good things. We seem to see the most integrations with Canvas. From where I sit, that's kind of what it looks like, is the more popular one. So that's the one I'll show really quickly here. So quick, tidbit about the Canvas integration is that, we can integrate with our App Store, or we can deep link, what I call deep linking, specific virtual desktops or specific applications to a course. So we could see that I'm logged in as a student at the moment. In my dashboard, I'm taking one course, my engineering course, and we could see a couple of things here. So we creatively titled our assignments homework 1 through 4. So we've got 4 assignments here that I have access to as a student. And I can see on the left-hand side, I've got a couple of LTI applications that were assigned to this course. So one of them is the App Store, which I showed you at the beginning. And then the other one is a direct link, or what I call a deep link, to the virtual machine. So if I click on this button, that's going to go ahead and open up a direct link to that virtual desktop and log me right into that environment. So what we're seeing is, a direct launch. We're bypassing single sign-on in this case because we've already authenticated through Canvas. So we're getting directly into the virtual machine. And when we do this, we have a lot of automation. So all the courses that me as a student, you know, me as a student is enrolled in will show up here in my chat. I'll see faculty if they're online as well, things like that. So all the same kind of, infrastructure set up there on the back end, but nicely automated through that integration. Now, as a student, I'm also seeing an assignment button here. So this is called assignment return. So what I can do is I can click on that button. And if you remember, we had 4 homework assignments that we created for that class. They show up here in this list. So if I want to go ahead and upload maybe a file that I worked on for my project, homework number 3, I can go ahead and select that. And then I can browse through these, redirected persistent profile folders that I have, and then upload something to upload that homework assignment to back to Canvas. So I can hit submit. That's going to go ahead and get returned. So homework 3 has been submitted. And if I go back to Canvas here and click on homework number 3, we should see the timestamp of that submission there. So it's a nice way to, get everything kind of in one place for faculty alike. And the same thing will happen if my login here was a faculty account. If I logged into Canvas as faculty and I launched the virtual environment through that, then I would see, that set of features as faculty: the presenter mode, the classroom, the messenger. That would all be automated through that deep link there through Canvas or Blackboard and so forth. So it's some handy it's a handy feature there. Really helps to, make it a seamless, easy to use experience for students and faculty alike, I think. Okay, so we've covered the logging in portion, App Store, file handling, file recovery, the faculty features for virtual classroom, presenter mode. Let me see if, yeah, let me see if I can also show you a little bit about the analytics that faculty get access to. I think that's pretty important as well. I think I closed my faculty session, so let me get back into that. But as a faculty role in the Apporto platform, let me move over here. So you'll have access to some analytics and specifically the faculty dashboard, which is really useful. So let me drill down into something that makes sense. That'll do for now. So what you'll have access to is this view here. And in the view, we can see that, I'm teaching some of these courses, and then specifically we can cover which virtual environment that course is using. And so what we're going to see is some generic, like basic metrics a little bit. So we've got some percentiles that you can toggle on and off. And if you want to plot a student against that percentile, you can. So we could see that I've plotted Phil here against the curves. And, we could also see that Phil he's been the most active, spent the most time in the environment. So it's just a quick glance at, what students are doing in your class. So if somebody is kind of falling behind a little bit, you can come in here and check, right? You could see why maybe. Maybe you'll see that they never even logged in, things like that. And then there's also kind of more customized reports that we can do as well. So you guys can email success@apporto.com. And if there's a specific student that you're concerned about, we can send you a report of all of their sessions, their session lengths, when was the last time they logged in, maybe they haven't logged in at all, things like that. So if there's any concerns around a student's behavior, we can also help with that. Okay, so that's kind of the quick cover of the analytics piece there. There's some other things like if you have a synchronous session that you're teaching using Apporto, you can schedule that class to kind of spin up, so to speak. There's stuff like that that you could do. So if you're teaching a class, at 5 p.m. today that's using SolidWorks, you can create an event for it, which will kind of get the cloud ready, so to speak. It'll get everything booted up. We have auto scaling enabled and things like that. So as students start to connect, they'll kind of get connected to different sessions. But if you want them all to kind of log in all at once and quickly connect, you can go ahead and create an event for that class. So you could do something like that. You could set it to repeat. If it's an impromptu session that you're teaching, you can also come into the App Store and just say, oh, okay, I'm teaching SolidWorks today, start the servers, right? So you could do something like that as well. So there's some of those impromptu type of, let's just spin everything up and get everything ready so that, 40 students can log in all at once. They'll still be able to, like I said, but some will kind of have a slower login. But if you just want everything to just work faster, we recommend using the start server feature there. Okay, we've got 9 minutes left. Do we have any computer science faculty or any faculty that is involved in like MIS courses or anything like that, teaching, I don't know, cybersecurity, networking, programming, or any vulnerability, ethical hacking type of stuff, anything like that? If anybody wants to answer in the chat there. If we do not, then I can probably skip the modular Cyberlab demo. It's a really, I'll kind of talk about it in a nutshell what it is. It's an environment that supports nested virtualization. So if you are teaching any of the topics I just mentioned, like networking, endpoint management, file forensics, info security, cybersecurity, anything like that, any MIS or IT related courses, this environment allows us to have a modular kind of topology view of the drag and drop VMs. Basically, you'll see a screen where you can take a bunch of endpoints, kind of drop them on a map, interconnect them, and kind of have this like self-enclosed, persistent, admin type of nested virtualization environment. That's kind of what the modular Cyberlab is, but it only really pertains to kind of the IT, computer science field there. So with that, I'm happy to, take some questions, or if anybody has anything else specific that they want me to cover or talk about. We do support all types of operating systems. So we have a virtual Mac. We also have any Linux-based OS. So Ubuntu, CentOS, Red Hat, you name it, even Raspberry Pi. We can virtualize all types of operating systems, Windows 10, Windows 11, server operating systems, etc. We also support a lot of customization too. So there's, virtual desktops that you saw I demonstrated that were kind of bland, so to speak, but we can also theme them. We can do that through your IT guys, your IT folks, and so we can, put a wallpaper, or maybe if you want a customized start menu and things like that. Those are all possible options there as well. Additionally, if you want to do further of these sessions, we can do that as well. These are free. Yeah, so Mac environments are definitely supported. We can do pretty much any version of Mac OS, so everything up to the latest. I think Ventura might be the latest one, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we could do Mac environments. In those Mac environments, we could do things like Xcode, right? That's kind of the more popular one right now, is teaching Xcode. So we could spin something up like that. We have customers using that today. So yeah, we could do, usually we use like Mac minis in the cloud. So really what we have is a data center with Mac machines running. So we're just kind of streaming sessions from those. Yeah, so Mac is supported. That actually brings me to this important piece that I forgot to mention, in full screen mode. So a lot of people sometimes have an issue when they're connecting to, like in this case, this is a Windows machine that I'm connected to, and I'm using Windows to connect to it, right? So my keyboards are, going to be a Windows-based keyboard. So Control C and Control V would be to copy and paste and things like that. But the key set is different on the Mac keyboards. And so we do cover, I think in our user guide, we talk about, I think, Mac keyboard. Let's see how our search works here. I think somewhere we have a KB on there about, yes, copying and pasting. And in that, we talk about copy and pasting on the Mac. So yeah, we talk about kind of the nuance there, that if you're connecting to from a physical Mac to a virtual Windows machine, that some of those keys will be a little bit different. So your expected Command C won't work in the same way. You have to use the Control key. So some nuances there, but we do cover them here in the Help Center. Okay, yeah. So that's, yeah. So yes, Macs are supported. If you have any follow-up questions about that, just send us an email. We do support any version of the OS on the Mac side. And we do support GPU heavy use cases on the Mac side as well. So things like, Mac Pros in the cloud and stuff like that. Yeah, and so I wanted to kind of leave you guys with this, that if you do want to more have like a more specific, customized, tailored training session that's using your environment. Here I'm just using our demo environment, but we can also do something like this with a faculty body, using your already existing Apporto environment, so we can cover your specific applications and things like that. So we could do a similar training session like this with a group of folks, using the environment that you guys already have access to. And we don't charge for that. So I do normally run these sessions monthly. Generally, we run these sessions, I think usually the second to last Tuesday of every month. But I think towards the end of semesters, we spin down at least one of the sessions because attendance is pretty low at that point. since everyone's really busy with wrapping up the semester or quarter. Yes, so we do support a customized, see if I can show you. We do support a customized, so this app store could be used in a number of different ways. One of the ways that that could be used is to provide access to like a web link or a downloaded app. So we could support something like that. So if you want to maybe submit some kind of application specifically that you want your students to be able to download from that app store to their physical machines, that could be created in your app store. Or if you want to provide them with a specific web link, that could also be kind of provided there in the app store as well. Does that kind of answer your question about if there's a desktop application that the faculty or students could download? So if you do have a need to, provide a specific installer in the App Store, that could be configured and then deployed to, a specific group of users. We do have some folks doing that.
Just to cover the other side of that possible question is, do we need to download anything to access the environment, your portal environment? And that is no. You can access it directly through your LMS system, as Max showed us, or through URL. And you can do that through any device. As long as you have web access, you can access your environment. So you can literally do this from your phone. If you have that URL access, you can test it. You can go there, or even if you have access to your LMS system through your phone, and you can launch your desktop from there, you can test that as well. You can launch everything, and as long as you have internet access, you'll have access to your environment. So students can use a Chromebook, phone, Mac. It really doesn't matter. As long as they have access to the web, they can access their environment.
Yep. Yeah. So all this is just browser-based access. Everything I've shown you. Okay, guys, we're at the top of the hour here. If there's any follow-up questions that you might have or anything that we can assist with, please feel free to reach out to us at success@apporto.com. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Rudy and I both worked at universities before this, so we are happy to meet with faculty anytime. So it's not an issue at all. And if you have any questions at all, just feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share and also end the recording. So this recording will be sent out after this session is over.